Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at no-code platforms.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, specifically WeWeb and Bubble.
Okay.
And, our listeners are interested in finding the right tool for their needs.
Yeah.
And we're going to help them make that decision.
Great.
By diving deep into some source material, we've got some marketing stuff from WeWeb. We've got Wikipedia's definition of low-code development platforms.
Okay.
And a comprehensive guide to Bubble.
Awesome.
So we're going to look at all three of these and hopefully come out with a better understanding of what each one does well.
Sound good.
So why don't we start with Wikipedia? What do they have to say about low-code?
Sure. So Wikipedia defines low-code development platforms as platforms that emphasize visual tools to make the development process faster and accessible to a wider audience.
So it's all about efficiency.
Yeah.
And empowering people who maybe aren't coders by trade to build things.
That's the gist of it.
So where does no code fit into this whole picture?
That's a great question. So low-code platforms often still require some coding knowledge for certain things,
Right.
Like more complex features or integrations.
You might need to dip into the code a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
No-code platforms take it a step further and aim for that 100% drag-and-drop functionality.
Okay.
So it's truly accessible to anyone, even if you have zero coding experience.
So it's like low code is assembling IKEA furniture.
I like that analogy.
You might need to improvise or use some tools every now and then.
Right.
But no code is like snapping Lego blocks together.
Exactly. It's all visual building, very intuitive.
Love it. Okay, so that's the lay of the land.
Yep.
We've got low code, we've got no code.
Right.
Now let's talk about the players in the game, specifically WeWeb and Bubble.
Let's do it.
So WeWeb really focuses on the front end, what your users see and interact with.
Right.
They rely on external tools for the back end, like the engine behind the scenes.
Makes sense.
And in their marketing, they kind of call out Bubble a little bit. Oh, really?
Yeah. They're like, hey, Bubble's great, but, some users might outgrow it.
Interesting.
What do they mean by that? What's their thinking there?
So their main argument is that separating the front end and back end gives you more control.
Okay.
And lets you optimize each part individually.
Got it.
Like, let's say you need to scale up your database for your app. With WeWeb, you could just tweak the database part without messing with the entire system.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and this separation is also really attractive to organizations that already have existing backends.
Yeah, they don't want to have to rebuild everything from scratch.
Exactly.
Okay, so flexibility and control seem to be big selling points for them.
Absolutely.
Well, one area where they really seem to stand out is responsive design.
Okay.
Making sure your website looks amazing on any device, any screen size.
Right. Which is crucial these days with so many different devices.
Exactly.
But they kind of imply that Bubble can be a bit clunky in this department.
Yeah, they make it sound like it's a bit of a trade-off. How so?
Well, they say Bubble's great for building the core functionality of an app really quickly,
Yeah.
but getting that pixel-perfect design across all those different screen sizes can be a real pain.
Right.
Whereas WeWeb uses those familiar web technologies like HTML and CSS.
Okay.
So if you're a designer who's already comfortable with tools like Figma, the transition to WeWeb should be pretty seamless.
So a flatter learning curve.
Exactly. And speaking of learning curves, let's talk about workflows.
Okay.
WeWeb claims theirs are way more flexible than Bubble's.
Really? In what way?
They say it's like, get this, a no-code version of Make, formerly Integromat.
Okay. For those of us who aren't coding wizards, what does that actually mean?
So imagine this. Bubble's workflows are like a step-by-step recipe.
Yeah.
You follow the instructions, you get the desired result.
Right. Very linear.
Exactly. But WeWeb, with its branching capabilities and loops, it's more like a choose-your-own-adventure recipe.
Interesting. Okay.
It can respond to user actions in a more dynamic way.
So WeWeb's workflows, they might be a bit more complex.
Yeah, they take a bit more time to master.
But they offer more power and flexibility.
Exactly.
I can see the appeal in that.
Definitely. And this level of control extends to SEO, which is obviously a huge deal for anyone building a website.
Absolutely. You want people to be able to find you.
Exactly. So WeWeb highlights its single-page application structure, which basically means faster loading times.
Got it.
Which Google loves.
Speed is king.
Exactly.
What else makes WeWeb good for SEO?
They also offer this thing called static page rendering.
Okay.
It's a more technical thing, but basically it improves how search engines see your website.
So it helps you rank higher.
Exactly.
Nice.
And they also use a global content delivery network.
Okay.
So your app loads quickly for anyone, anywhere in the world.
So it's good for users.
Yes.
And good for SEO.
Win-win.
Definitely a win-win.
Okay, so they've really optimized for SEO.
It seems like it.
They also talk about integrating libraries and components,
right.
And they make a point of saying that they use JavaScript and Vue.js,
okay.
Whereas Bubble uses more of a plugin system.
Got it.
Can you break down what that means for someone who maybe isn't familiar with those terms?
Sure. So think of plugins, like pre-built tools that add specific functionalities to your app.
Okay.
Like if you want to add a contact form to your website, there's a plugin for that.
Got it.
Bubble has a whole ecosystem of these plugins.
Handy.
Yeah. But WeWeb, on the other hand, uses JavaScript, which is like the language of the web.
Okay.
And Vue.js, which is a framework that helps structure and simplify the front-end code.
So it's more powerful, but potentially more complex.
You could say that.
Okay.
It's kind of like the difference between having a set menu at a restaurant versus having a full kitchen where you can cook anything you want.
Okay, so you've got options.
Exactly. You have a lot more flexibility, and you can tap into a vast world of JavaScript libraries and tools.
But with great power.
Comes a potentially steeper learning curve.
Right, that makes sense.
Which is why WeWeb really emphasizes its community.
Okay.
They've got a really active community of designers and developers who share tips, troubleshoot issues, and help each other navigate those complexities.
It's like having a built-in support system for your no-code journey.
Exactly.
Oh.
And they also make a big deal about avoiding something called vendor lock-in.
Okay, now that's a term I've heard thrown around, but I'm not entirely sure I understand it.
Yeah, it's a common concern with these platforms. So basically, vendor lock-in is when you're stuck with a platform.
Oh, okay.
Because you can't take your work elsewhere.
Oh, I see.
Imagine building your dream house.
Yeah.
And then finding out you can never move.
Oh, no.
Right. That's kind of what vendor lock-in is like.
Not good.
No, not at all. And WeWeb wants to give you that freedom to move.
Okay.
With their yearly plans, they allow you to export your project.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and you can even self-host your website if you want.
So you have total control.
Yep. Exactly. Which is a big deal for businesses, especially when it comes to things like data regulations, like GDPR.
Right. Right. Very important.
So that's a big selling point for WeWeb.
Okay, so WeWeb is all about flexibility.
Yes.
Control and owning your work.
They want to give you the keys to the kingdom.
I like it. Now, let's switch gears and talk about Bubble.
Okay.
The all-in-one powerhouse.
The 800-pound gorilla in the room.
They position themselves as the platform for building complex web and mobile apps.
Right.
All with that drag-and-drop ease that we've come to expect from no-code.
It's what makes it so appealing.
Exactly. So what makes Bubble so powerful?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to their comprehensive approach.
Okay.
They handle everything for you.
Like what?
From the user interface to the databases to the hosting.
Wow.
They take care of all the behind-the-scenes stuff so you can just focus on building your app.
So you can stay laser-focused on the creative side.
Precisely. And speaking of behind the scenes, they really emphasize their encrypted database.
Okay, how big of a deal is that for someone choosing a no-code platform?
It's a huge deal. Data security is more important now than ever.
Right.
And Bubble goes to great lengths to protect your data, both while it's being transmitted and while it's just sitting on their servers.
So whether it's in transit or at rest, my data is safe.
Exactly. They've got you covered.
That peace of mind is definitely valuable.
Absolutely. And they also handle deployment and hosting.
Okay.
They've even got dedicated plans for those who need that extra power.
So if your app really takes off...
Yeah, they can scale with you.
That's great. But I did notice they mentioned that you can't host your app on a personal server.
Right. That's true.
Some people might see that as a limitation. What do you think?
It's a trade-off.
Okay.
You're getting convenience and scalability, but you're giving up some control.
Right.
It's like choosing between a rental property and building your own house.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Building your own house, you get total control. But it's a lot more work.
Right.
Renting is easier, but you have to play by the landlord's rule.
And in this case, Bubble is the landlord.
Exactly. And they provide a pretty nice, secure, and reliable platform, I'd say.
Okay, so it's a matter of weighing your priorities.
Exactly. Now let's talk about something they call the API connector.
Okay.
They describe it as a game changer.
Okay.
But first, can you remind me, what's an API again?
Yeah, so API stands for Application Programming Interface.
Right.
And it's essentially a messenger that allows different apps to communicate and share information with each other.
Okay, I think I'm following.
So think about it like ordering takeout online.
Okay.
The restaurant's website is like one app, and the delivery service is another app.
Right.
The API is what allows you to seamlessly place your order on the website and have it sent to the delivery service without ever leaving the website.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I get it now.
So, Bubble's API connector basically allows your app to tap into the functionalities of other services.
Interesting. So you can do more without having to build those features yourself?
Exactly. You don't need to code those features from scratch.
That's really powerful.
It opens up a world of possibilities.
Like what?
You can connect to payment gateways, social media platforms, all sorts of other services.
It's like having a universal adapter for your no-code toolbox.
Exactly.
I love it.
And speaking of tools, Bubble also provides a built-in debugger.
Oh, okay, for those inevitable bugs that pop up.
Exactly, because even with no code, things can still go wrong.
Very true.
So what makes their debugger stand out?
Well, imagine trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Okay.
That's what debugging can feel like sometimes.
Right.
But Bubble's debugger is like having a metal detector.
Okay.
It helps you pinpoint errors in your logic, identify any bottlenecks that might be slowing things down, and just make sure everything's running smoothly.
Right. So it's like having a no-code mechanic on hand at all times.
Pretty much. It's incredibly valuable, especially as your app grows more complex.
Okay, so we've talked about Bubble's power, its flexibility, and ease of use.
Right. A lot to like there.
Well, let's shift gears to pricing, because that can often be a deciding factor for people.
Very true, especially for smaller businesses or individual creators.
So WeWeb keeps it pretty simple. They've got a free plan, and then paid yearly plans.
Makes sense.
With the option to export your project.
Right.
Bubble's a little bit more intricate. They have this workload units system.
Oh, yeah, that could be a bit confusing at first.
Can you unpack that for us? What does that even mean?
Sure. So essentially every action in your app, whether it's a user logging in, data being processed, or even just a page loading, it consumes these workload units.
So you're not just paying for features. Right. You're paying for how much your app actually does.
Exactly. It's like paying for utilities.
Oh, I see. The more you use, the higher your bill.
Exactly. So it can be incredibly cost-effective for small projects or apps that are just starting out. But as your app grows and you get more users, those workload units can add up.
So you really have to monitor your usage.
Yeah. Planning and optimization are key with Bubble's pricing.
Got it. But at least they offer a free plan as well, right?
They do, which is great.
So you can test the waters before diving in.
Exactly. You can build a prototype, see how it performs, get a feel for those workload units, how they translate into actual usage.
So you're essentially buying a slice of their server power with Bubble.
That's a good way to put it.
And how big of a slice you need depends on what you're building.
Yeah.
And how many users you have.
Precisely. It's a different approach to pricing, but it can be very flexible and scalable.
Got it. So with Bubble, you're essentially buying a slice of their server power.
That's a good way to put it.
And how big of a slice you need depends on what you're building and how many users you have.
Exactly. It's a different approach to pricing, but it can be very flexible and scalable.
Okay, so we've talked about how Bubble handles a lot of the technical stuff for you.
Right. They want to make it as easy as possible for you to build and launch your app.
But they also emphasize that their platform is super powerful, capable of handling complex applications.
Yeah, they're not just catering to hobbyists or people building simple websites.
Right. They're going after businesses, entrepreneurs, people with big ideas.
Exactly. They want to be the go-to platform for anyone who wants to build the next big thing without writing a single line of code.
That's ambitious, but is it realistic? Can a no-code platform truly handle the complexities of a large-scale application?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer, like most things in life, is it depends.
On what?
Well, on a lot of factors: the complexity of your app, the number of users you have, the specific features you need.
Right.
And this is where WeWeb and Bubble really differentiate themselves.
Okay, how so?
Well, WeWeb is all about giving you the freedom and flexibility to build exactly what you want, even if it means connecting to external tools or getting your hands a little dirty with code.
So they're not afraid of a little complexity?
Not at all. They embrace it. They see it as a strength.
Interesting. And Bubble, what's their approach?
Bubble is all about speed and simplicity.
Okay.
They want you to be able to build and launch your app as quickly as possible without having to worry about the technical details.
So they're like the Apple of no-code platforms. It just works.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, that's exactly what they're looking for.
It makes sense, especially for solopreneurs or small teams who don't have the time or resources to mess around with complex startups.
Absolutely. They just want to focus on their idea, on building something awesome and getting it out into the world.
I can respect that. But where does that leave us? How do we decide which platform is right for us?
Well, it all comes down to your specific needs and priorities.
Right.
If you need ultimate flexibility and control, and you're not afraid of a steeper learning curve.
WeWeb might be the way to go.
Okay.
But if you prioritize speed, simplicity, and having everything taken care of for you,
right,
Bubble could be a better fit.
It sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Exactly. The best no-code platform is the one that best meets your unique needs.
Well said. So where do we go from here? How can our listeners figure out which platform is right for them?
The best way to truly understand the differences between these platforms is to try them out for yourself.
Get your hands dirty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Both WeWeb and Bubble offer free plans, so you can explore their interfaces, play around with their features, and get a feel for which one clicks with you.
That's great advice. There's nothing quite like hands-on experience to help you make an informed decision.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try building the same simple app on both platforms and see which one feels more intuitive, more enjoyable to use.
Because at the end of the day, it should be fun, right?
Absolutely. Building software, even without code, should be a creative and rewarding experience. I love that. All right, so we've explored the power of Bubble. We've talked about the importance of choosing the right platform for your needs.
And we've encouraged our listeners to roll up their sleeves and dive into the world of no-code.
What more could we ask for? It's so interesting how WeWeb and Bubble have taken such different approaches to this whole no-code thing.
Yeah, it's like they're speaking to different kinds of creators,
Totally. Like WeWeb seems to be saying, hey, we trust you. Here are the tools. Go wild.
Exactly. And Bubble's more like, we got this. Just tell us what you want to build.
Right. But both come with their own, quirks, things to keep in mind.
Totally. Like we touched on Bubble's potential performance issues with really complex apps.
Right. And WeWeb's reliance on external tools for certain things.
And let's not forget the learning curve. WeWeb might seem intuitive for designers, but those workflows could take a minute to wrap your head around.
For sure. And Bubble might have that drag and drop simplicity, but mastering the logic behind it and figuring out those workload units.
Right.
That takes some practice.
Definitely. I think there's no escaping that no matter what platform you choose.
It's like that old saying, anything worthwhile takes effort.
So true. But that's where a strong community can be such a game changer.
Oh, absolutely. Having other no-coders to talk to, bounce ideas off.
Yeah, get help when you're stuck.
Yeah, it makes all the difference.
It's like having a built-in support system for your no-code journey.
Exactly. And it seems like both WeWeb and Bubble really get that,
Oh, for sure. They're creating these spaces where people can connect, learn from each other, share their wins.
Push the boundaries of what's possible with no code.
I mean, think about it. This Bubble guide is full of examples of what people are already building.
It's pretty amazing, right? Job boards, online marketplaces.
I even saw some stuff about internal tools for big companies.
It's crazy. It really shows you how no-code is changing the game.
Democratizing software development, they call it.
Which basically means anyone with an idea can build an app now.
You don't need to be a coding genius.
Love it. It's an exciting time to be in this space, for sure.
Absolutely. We're still in the early days, but WeWeb, Bubble.
All these no-code platforms are paving the way for a future where anyone can build software.
Imagine that.
Wild. Well, on that note of a future filled with no-code possibilities, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive into WeWeb and Bubble.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today.
We talked about the differences between low-code and no-code, dove into the nitty-gritty of workflows and workload units.
We even touched on the importance of community and the future of software development.
Hopefully you're feeling inspired to start your own no-code journey.
And remember, the best way to really understand these platforms is to try them out for yourself.
Both WeWeb and Bubble offer free plans, so go explore, experiment, have some fun.
Exactly. Get your hands dirty, build something cool. Until next time.
Happy building.